Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Rain drizzled over the quiet suburbs of Bridgewood Heights, and the gentle patter against the bedroom window acted like a lullaby until it wasn't. At precisely 2 in the morning, Julian Gray jolted awake. For a moment he thought he'd heard a thunderclap, but the house was silent. No howling wind, no doors creaking, just the persistent ping of a phone notification piercing the heavy stillness. He rubbed his eyes, trying to focus. The dim street lamp outside cast faint orange stripes across the bedroom wall. He realized the sound came from Celine's phone, which lay face down on her bedside table. Usually she muted it before bed. Tonight, apparently, she hadn't. Julian frowned. Who texts at this hour? The question pulsed in his mind as he shifted toward the device. Celine lay curled up on her side, breathing softly. Guilt pinched him. He wasn't the type to snoop. But the phone buzzed again, an insistent reminder that something demanded attention. He hesitated, heart thumping. Despite the gentle hush of rain, an uneasy tension clung to the bedroom air. A wave of curiosity, or perhaps dread, pushed him to tilt the phone just enough to read the screen. Damian Roth, that was the name on the notification bubble. Under it, a short message. Make sure everything's arranged. Miss you. Good night. Julian felt a spike of something he couldn't name: fear, suspicion, maybe even anger. Who in the world was Damian Roth? And why was he texting Celine like that in the middle of the night? She never mentioned a Damian, at least not recently. Could it be a colleague? A client from her event planning projects? Still, Miss You had a decidedly personal ring to it. He set the phone down carefully, as if it were a piece of fragile evidence. His heart pounded so loudly he wondered if it might wake Celine. Instead, she turned slightly, mumbling in her sleep, oblivious to his turmoil. Julian pressed a hand against his forehead, hoping to calm his racing thoughts. The old wooden floor creaked beneath his feet when he slipped out of bed to glance through the window. Outside, the street lamp flickered, illuminating the swirling mist of drizzle. The gloom carried a raw bite that soaked through the glass, making the room feel colder than it was. It reminded him of scenes from a noir movie, tense, shadowy, and full of secrets. He tried to steady his breathing. Don't jump to conclusions. Maybe it was just professional chatter. Celine often collaborated with celebrity chefs or well-known restaurateurs for her culinary festivals. But at 2 a.m.? And that tone, miss you. Not exactly typical for a strict work relationship. Julian recalled the past few weeks. Celine stepping out into the backyard late at night, phone pressed to her ear, voice hushed. Her new preference for that bold, smoky perfume she never used to wear. Just last weekend, he'd spotted her phone locked with a fresh passcode, something she hadn't done in years. One piece at a time, puzzle fragments of suspicion formed, and it set his nerves on edge. Eventually, he forced himself back into bed, though sleep remained elusive. Every time he closed his eyes, that text replayed in his mind. He wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt this was his wife, after all, but a knot of anxiety twisted in his gut. Through half-lidded eyes, he watched Celine's peaceful silhouette until the faint promise of dawn broke across the sky. By morning, the drizzle gave way to a gray murk. Celine woke with a slight yawn, reaching for her phone. Julian pretended to be busy on his laptop across the room. "Morning," she said, a bit absent-mindedly. "Morning," he replied, attempting a casual tone. "You slept okay?" Celine shrugged. Busy day ahead. I have a meeting at the agency." Julian set his laptop aside. Now or never. "So your phone was buzzing last night. Someone named Damian messaged you." Her hand froze as she scrolled. She looked up, forcing a thin smile. "Oh, right. He's helping me with an upcoming festival in Florida." "Florida?" Julian repeated. "You didn't tell me you were planning a trip there soon." She shrugged, crossing the room toward the closet. "I was going to mention it. It's not fully confirmed, and I didn't want to bother you with the details until everything's set. You've been so swamped at the architecture firm." He watched her flip through hangers, her motions stiff, as though she dreaded the conversation. The silence settled between them, thick with unsaid words. "Celine," he tried again, voice gentler. If something's stressing you out, you tell me, right? She paused, exhaled, and faced him with forced brightness. I'm fine, Jules. Really. It's just a lot of last-minute planning. I'll be out late tonight. Don't wait up. She offered a quick kiss on his cheek lips, cold, distant, then grabbed her purse and hurried out. Julian remained, hearing the door shut and the car engine rumble away. Only after she was gone did he let out the breath he'd been holding. In the hush that followed, he couldn't shake the sense of foreboding. Something intangible had changed in their home. Walls that once felt secure now echoed with unspoken doubts, and it chilled him more than the midnight rain ever could. He glanced at the rumpled bedsheets. This was just the start, he sensed. A storm was brewing, and neither the drizzle nor the dawn could wash away his looming fears. Julian fiddled with his key fob as he pulled into the parking lot of McNeil Architecture, the mid-sized firm where he worked. The morning was damp and overcast, yet the office lobby bustled with the usual Monday energy designers carrying foam models, interns scrambling with coffee trays. He tried to focus on the day's tasks, but fragments of last night's discovery kept tugging at him like a loose thread on his shirt. Inside his cubicle, he spread out blueprint drafts for a remodel project. Colors, lines, and angles usually absorbed his mind, but not today. Every 5 minutes, he'd glance at his phone, half expecting a text from Celine or some explanation about that midnight message. Nothing came. Around noon, his colleague, Brenda Parks, a bright-eyed project manager, strolled by. "Hey, Jules, want to grab lunch with the crew? Might help clear your head. You look distracted." He forced a smile. "I'll join you in a bit. Just need to finish these sketches." Brenda nodded, unconvinced, then vanished down the hall. As soon as she left, Julian slumped back in his chair, letting out a sigh. He'd always prided himself on being calm under pressure, but personal turmoil was another story. On a whim, he texted Celine, "Hope your day's going well. Let's do dinner tonight?" 5 minutes passed. 10, 15. No response. The sense of unease festered. Late afternoon arrived, and so did his frustration. He dialed her number. The line rang once, then again. Finally, a click. "Hey," Celine answered, voice hushed. "Can I call you back? I'm in the middle of something." Julian heard muffled chatter in the background. A man's laughter, maybe? He could have sworn it was a deeper pitch. Sure. Everything okay?" She paused. "Yes, everything's fine. We'll talk later, okay?" Before he could respond, the call ended. He stared at his phone, feeling like he'd just glimpsed a door slammed in his face. That evening, Julian left the office early and hurried home, determined to salvage the rest of the night. He prepared a simple dinner-baked salmon, roasted vegetables, a bottle of Pinot Noir. He even set out candles. If something was off between them, maybe a quiet meal would coax out the truth. He wanted to believe communication might still fix this widening gap. By 8, the salmon had cooled on the stove, and the wine sat uncorked on the counter. No sign of Celine. 9 o'clock rolled by. Nothing. He texted again. "Is everything all right? Dinner's waiting." The message remained unread. Sometime close to 10, the front door clicked open. Julian stood from the sofa, heart pounding, with a mix of relief and anger. He glimpsed her in the hallway, hair slightly windswept, wearing a more elaborate outfit than usual for a typical work meeting. There was a faint scent in the air, a perfume he recognized as hers, but combined with something else he couldn't place. "Sorry," she muttered, slipping off her heels. "Things ran late at the office. I'm exhausted." Julian motioned toward the untouched food. "I made dinner for us." She glanced at the table, guilt flickering across her face. "I'm sorry, Jules. I grabbed a bite on the way. I didn't see your texts. I was driving." Her explanation didn't add up, but he swallowed the confrontation. "I kept it warm for a while. It's all ruined now." Celine touched his arm with a gentle pressure that felt forced. "Tomorrow, I promise. Let's do tomorrow." She retreated upstairs without another word. Julian was left in the dim living room, the candles nearly burned out, the salmon drying by the minute. He poured himself a glass of wine, wishing it could wash away the ache. Before blowing out the candles, he noticed her phone on the entry table. It vibrated once with a new text. The screen went dark too quickly for him to see who it was from. Another pang of paranoia flared. Damien? He sighed, turning off the lights. A swirl of anxiety and frustration followed him to bed, overshadowing the home he once found so comforting. The next few days passed like a fog. Julian's schedule was hectic client presentations, site visits, and contract negotiations. But no matter how busy he was, a single truth weighed on his mind. Celine was flying to Florida for an event. She'd sprung the news last minute, leaving him with only scraps of detail. Early Tuesday morning, the day of her departure, Julian insisted on driving her to the airport, but Celine brushed him off. She claimed she needed a rideshare because the agency might require additional stops. The excuse felt thin, yet Julian found himself unable to press further. Her eyes showed the same distant glimmer every time the subject came up. At dawn, he walked downstairs to see Celine dressed in a sleek navy blouse and fitted slacks, a look that conveyed professional confidence, maybe too much so for a typical business trip. She hurriedly zipped up her suitcase, then reached for her phone, double-checking the flight status. "I'll be back in a few days," she said, not quite meeting his gaze. "You sure you'll be okay?" Julian frowned. "Of course I'll be okay. Just why the sudden secrecy about Florida? You haven't told me much about the festival." She paused, a flicker of tension crossing her features. "It's not secrecy. It's just high pressure. I'm coordinating a culinary showcase with some pretty big names. It's hectic." He wanted to believe her. "If you need me, call any time. Let's try to keep in touch." She offered a small nod, grabbed the handle of her suitcase, and waved awkwardly. "See you soon." Then she was out the door, leaving him standing in the hallway, a swirl of questions following her. 15 minutes later, he found himself pacing the living room. The hush of early morning made the house feel cavernous. The memory of that suspicious text from Damien wouldn't leave his mind. Could this Florida trip be something else? He decided to head to work early, hoping distraction would help. Yet in the back of his mind, he pictured the busy airport terminals, travelers dragging suitcases, flights called out over the intercom. He'd once shared those moments of excitement with Celine, smiling, walking side by side, discussing future plans. Now she raced off alone, carrying tension he couldn't soothe. Later that day, he tried calling her around lunchtime when her plane should have landed. The phone rang endlessly before going to voicemail. He texted, "Let me know you arrived safely." Hours slipped by with no reply. By late afternoon, he spotted a social media post from Celine's public event account. A snapshot of bright overhead lighting, a team of chefs, and Celine in the corner of the frame, wearing an official badge. Center stage was a man with meticulously styled hair and a confident smirk, Damien Roth. The caption read, "Florida Culinary Expo, kicking off day one with amazing talents." Julian stared at the photo, a chill running down his spine. Damien stood uncomfortably close to Celine, as if they were already well acquainted. The comments below ranged from excited chatter about upcoming dishes to compliments on how glamorous the event looked. Julian felt a hollow pang in his gut. This was more than professional excitement. The expression on Celine's face in that shot was bright, almost glimmering. He spent the rest of the evening alone, microwaving leftover takeout. The house felt heavier, gloom settling into every corner. He flicked through mindless TV channels, searching for a distraction, but none came. Finally, his phone buzzed. A text from Celine. "Landed safe. Super busy. Will call tomorrow. Miss you." He snorted at the irony. "Miss you," she said, but it didn't feel like she truly did. He stared at the message, wondering if it was laced with guilt or just routine politeness. A ghost of the last midnight text from Damien flitted through his mind. He typed back, "Glad you're okay. I'll wait for your call." Then he placed his phone aside, feeling more uncertain than ever. As night fell, a swirl of memories crowded his thoughts, how they used to plan trips together, reading each other's itineraries, joking about flight delays. Now everything felt off. The Florida sunshine she was stepping into felt miles away from his gray reality. The distance between them grew, and he knew this was only the beginning of a long, painful unraveling. 2 days had passed since Celine arrived in Florida. Julian tried to be rational, telling himself that high-profile events meant she'd be swamped, that limited phone calls and fragmented texts were normal. But his rational side faltered each time he saw glimpses of her world through social media or fleeting messages that told him next to nothing. Friday evening, after a particularly grueling day at McNeil Architecture, he settled on his living room couch with a stack of design proposals. As he scrolled idly through Facebook, a new post from Celine's event page caught his eye, this time a vibrant group photo featuring well-known chefs in crisp white coats, sponsors in matching polo shirts, and Celine in the center, beaming. Beside her stood Damian Roth again, that trademark smirk plastered on his face. They looked comfortable, their shoulders almost touching. Julian felt a sharp twinge of jealousy. Maybe it was innocent. But something about the angle of that shot, the way Damian leaned in to speak near her ear, made Julian's skin crawl. He decided to call her. The phone rang once, then again. At last, she picked up, breathless. "Julian, hey, I'm kinda in the middle of a demonstration. Can you call me in a few hours?" "Celine, He paused, trying to sound calm. "I wanted to hear your voice. It's been a couple of days. How's everything?" "Great. Hectic, though," she replied, laughter buzzing in the background. "We've got a full house. Everyone's excited. Damian's about to go on stage for a live cooking showcase. I'm helping him prep." "Damian Wright," Julian said, voice tight despite himself. "He's everywhere in the photos." She gave a short chuckle. "He's the star attraction. Look, I'll text you, okay? Gotta run." The line clicked dead. Julian exhaled. Feeling like he'd just been sidestepped, he tossed his phone onto the couch and turned on the TV, but none of it registered. The echoes of that phone call left him feeling smaller, as if he'd been reduced to a footnote in her grand new adventure. Before bed, he flicked through Celine's Instagram feed. More images loaded, elegantly arranged plates, high-energy crowd shots, behind-the-scenes selfies with grinning chefs. Always, it seemed, Damian hovered near her. The comment sections brimmed with admiration for them both, calling them the dynamic duo of food festivals. Julian's stomach churned. As he was about to lock his phone, a single direct message from Celine arrived, almost as if she knew he'd be scanning her social media. Celine, 9:57 p.m. "Sorry about earlier. Showcases are insane. Miss you. I'll try to call after the after-party tonight. Don't wait up." He read it 3 times. After-party. That word stung. Images flashed in his mind. A fancy venue by the beach, upbeat music, cocktails flowing, Celine possibly giggling with that charismatic chef by her side. The more he pictured it, the colder he felt. By midnight, she still hadn't called. Julian dozed off on the couch. He woke around 2 a.m., the TV humming static. No missed calls, no texts. With a resigned sigh, he trudged to the bedroom, an odd numbness settling over him. Saturday morning, after grabbing a quick coffee, Julian forced himself to run errands. The world outside carried on. Neighbors watering lawns, children riding bikes, the local bakery bustling with weekend customers. He felt like a stranger in his own neighborhood, overshadowed by a creeping dread he couldn't shake. Just after noon, his phone buzzed. He snatched it up. Maybe it was Celine. Instead, it was a message from Brenda at the office, reminding him about Monday's presentation. Disappointment weighed on him. He typed a curt reply, then moved on with his errands. By late afternoon, he was back home, scanning the internet for any news about the Florida Culinary Expo. Sure enough, local coverage featured a highlight reel, short clips of Damian flambeing a dish, Celine speaking in front of a banner, describing the festival's mission. She looked radiant, confidence exuding from every gesture. He watched it with conflicting emotions, pride that she was achieving success, mingled with a pang of betrayal at how distant she'd become from him. Finally, her call came that evening, short and rushed. "Hey, Julian. Just wanted to let you know we wrapped day 3. Tomorrow's final demos, then I'll be home soon." He closed his eyes. "I'm glad it's going well. Feels like I hardly know what you're doing out there." "I've been busy," she said, an apologetic edge to her tone. "Damian and I were juggling sponsor meetings, press coverage. I'm sorry if I made you worry." "It's fine," he lied. "We'll talk when you get back." They hung up. Julian stared at the phone, the same uneasy weight in his chest. He realized that, for all her talk of missing him, her world now seemed miles away, bright with camera flashes and culinary fanfare. And at the center of it all was a man named Damien Roth. He rose from the couch, pulling the curtains shut. He felt an urgent need for her return, not just physically, but emotionally, like he was clinging to the last thread that tied them together. In that moment, standing in the hush of the living room, he understood that suspicion had overtaken him completely, and he knew, deep down, that once Celine came home, nothing would be the same. It was past midnight when Celine finally stepped through the front door, pulling a suitcase that looked as though it had been tossed around by baggage handlers and her own hurried packing. Julian, who had dozed off on the living room couch, snapped awake at the sound of wheels scraping the hardwood floor. He rubbed his eyes, blinking at the sight of her. A soft lamp illuminated the foyer, revealing the mess. Her hair slightly tousled, her blouse rumpled, and what appeared to be faint traces of someone else's cologne clinging to her coat. It wasn't the familiar floral perfume she usually wore. This was darker, more musky. Julian's stomach twisted. She offered a tight smile. "You're still up?" "Couldn't really sleep," he replied, forcing himself to keep calm. "You told me you'd land hours ago. I was worried." Celine set down her carry-on with a thud. "There was a flight delay and then baggage mix-ups," she said, glancing away. "I'm exhausted, Jules. Can we talk in the morning?" His voice took on a slight edge. "We can, but I'd like to at least know how your trip really went." Her gaze flickered, a micro-expression of guilt or hesitation. "The festival was successful, if that's what you mean. We had a ton of press coverage, and the turnout was great." Julian stood, crossing his arms. "Right. And Damien? You were with him almost every time I saw the event photos." Celine's lips tightened. "He's just a chef, one of the headliners. We had to coordinate daily. Look, I'm done answering questions for tonight, okay?" She sighed, her exhaustion morphing into annoyance. "I can't do this interrogation right now." He wanted to press further, but something about her slumped shoulders and heavy-lidded eyes stopped him. Maybe it was pity, or maybe he simply dreaded a blow-up at 1 a.m. So he stepped aside, letting her pass into the hallway. As she brushed by, that strange cologne hit him again, a whisper of something unsettling. "Whatever," he muttered under his breath, instantly regretting how bitter he sounded. Her footsteps headed upstairs, but then she paused on the landing. "I'm sorry," she murmured without turning around. "We'll talk in the morning, I promise." But the apology felt half-formed, as though it barely held itself together. When she disappeared into the bedroom, Julian sank back onto the couch. He stared at the half-finished glass of water on the coffee table, mind swirling with questions left unanswered. At least she's home, he told himself. Yet the relief he wanted to feel never quite surfaced. Instead, a sharp pang of distrust settled in his chest, heavier than the hour and darker than the quiet outside. Eventually, he trudged upstairs, bracing for another confrontation. But upon reaching the bedroom, he found the lights off, and Celine already curled under a separate blanket on the far side. He grabbed a spare pillow from the closet. "All right, guess I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight," he thought grimly. A small storm of anger and hurt pelted him inside, but he swallowed it down. Before leaving, he lingered in the doorway, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness. He could just make out Celine's silhouette, her breathing shallow and uneven. Maybe she wasn't really asleep. Maybe she was just as afraid of facing him as he was of confronting her. In that moment, the bedroom felt like a symbol of their shifting dynamic. Once a warm sanctuary for them both, now a place divided by tension. Without another word, Julian closed the door and headed to the guest room, each step echoing the distance growing between them. Morning light filtered through the window blinds, casting striped shadows on the hallway floor. Julian had slept fitfully in the guest room, haunted by half-formed dreams of Celine and a faceless figure wearing that unfamiliar cologne. When he finally rose, the house was eerily quiet. Celine had slipped out early, leaving behind an unspoken truce of avoidance. After grabbing a quick cup of coffee, Julian found himself pacing around the bedroom, tension buzzing in his temples. He spotted Celine's partially open suitcase near the closet door. His better judgment whispered, "Don't invade her privacy." But the memory of that midnight text from Damien and all the social media shots overpowered his reluctance. His heart pounded as he knelt down and carefully unzipped the suitcase the rest of the way. At first, it was just clothes shoved in haphazardly, a wrinkled blouse, a pair of heels, a folder from the festival. Then, a faint whiff of that musky cologne clung to something deeper in the bag. He rummaged past a zippered compartment and discovered a small gift box embossed with a hotel's logo in Florida. A folded receipt was taped to the side, revealing an expensive spa package for two. Julian's pulse hammered. He didn't recall her mentioning any spa visits, let alone a couple's spa booking. For two? He bit his lip so hard he tasted copper. This can't be just a business perk. He also spotted a slender necklace with a delicate silver pendant shaped like a small flame. Tucked beside it was a note scrawled on hotel stationery. To my partner in crime, can't wait for the next adventure. A cold dread knotted in Julian's gut. D. That had to be Damien, right? A low rustling noise behind him nearly made him jump. He turned to see Celine standing at the doorway, eyes wide. She must have come back from her morning errand. For a moment, neither spoke. Tension coiled in the air like a drawn bowstring. Finally, Celine's voice trembled with anger. Or was it panic? What the hell, Julian? Why are you snooping through my suitcase? He rose slowly, fists clenched around the note. I wanted to see what I'm missing here. I guess I got my answer. You had no right, she snapped, striding forward to snatch the note from his hand. That's private. And I'm your husband, he retorted, voice low and raw. I think I'm allowed to be concerned when I find something like this. He gestured to the gift box. Spa reservations for two? A personal note from D? Celine's jaw tightened. She struggled to keep her gaze on him. It's not what it looks like. Then what is it? His tone rose, frustration cracking. You've been distant for weeks. You're off in Florida with that so-called star chef. You come home at midnight wearing another man's cologne. She cut him off, voice trembling with fury. You're out of line, Julian. You invaded my privacy, going through my things like I'm some criminal. He scoffed. Feels more like I'm the one being lied to. Silence crashed between them, thick and bitter. She held the note as though it might burst into flames at any second. Eventually, Celine's shoulders sagged, her anger flickering into something like regret. You don't understand the context. Damien was just playing around. The spa pass was part of the festival sponsors package. Nothing happened, okay? God, can you at least trust me for once? Julian's voice quivered with heartbreak. Trust you? After I find this? He gestured again to the evidence. Look me in the eye and say none of this is romantic. Swear it. Her gaze skittered off to the side, and that momentary hesitation told him everything he needed to know. Or so he believed. He inhaled shakily, stepping backward. The air felt suffocating, as though the bedroom walls were closing in. Celine tried to reach for his arm, but he jerked away. Jules! No, he whispered, tears threatening to betray him. You said it's not what it looks like, but it looks exactly like betrayal. A heavy quiet filled the room. Finally, she mustered. I'm sorry you feel that way. He gave a short, mirthless laugh. Yeah, me too. Without another word, he walked out, letting the suitcase remain as a bitter testament to everything that was unraveling. Downstairs, he threw on his jacket and grabbed his keys. As he stepped outside into the crisp morning air, the reality sunk deeper. Their home no longer felt like a sanctuary, but a battlefield of secrets. And for the first time, he felt the gnawing certainty that their marriage might be teetering on a precipice one more push, and there'd be no going back. Just a week later, Julian found himself gripping the steering wheel with clammy hands, pulling up to a towering hotel in downtown Bridgewood. Rows of luxury cars lined the valet station, and bright lights illuminated the entrance. Celine had insisted they attend this corporate gala together. It's important, she'd said, as if bridging the rift between them required a show of unity. But Julian couldn't shake the swirling dread in his gut. He stepped out of the car, adjusting his suit jacket. The night air was cool, and the sky overhead glowed with city lights. Inside the hotel lobby, everything looked opulent marble floors, crystal chandeliers, a red carpet leading to the ballroom. He spotted Celine waiting near an ornate staircase, wearing a sleek burgundy dress. She looked stunning, but her expression was anxious. She approached. Thanks for coming, she said quietly, glancing around at the crowd. My team is here. Some sponsors, a few chefs from the Florida festival, including Damien. I thought maybe if you and I show up together. Julian cut her off, voice subdued. Sure, let's just see how it goes. They walked to the ballroom's entrance. Inside, music played softly, and servers in white gloves carried trays of champagne flutes. People mingled in clusters, executives from Celine's event agency, local media figures, and the glamorous swirl of well-dressed guests. Yet the second Julian spotted Damien Roth across the room, his mood nosedived. Damien, clad in a tailored tux, was talking animatedly to a small group. He radiated star power, his confident grin and casual posture drawing eyes. Soon enough, he noticed Celine, winked, and sauntered over. "Celine, you made it," Damien greeted, voice smooth. "And you must be Julian." He extended a hand with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Pleasure." Julian forced himself to shake it. "Likewise." The tension crackled, practically visible in the air. Celine attempted to diffuse it with a polite smile. "Damien, let's not monopolize all your time. I'm sure the sponsors—" "Oh, they can wait," Damien interjected, taking a casual sip of champagne. "I wanted to personally congratulate Julian for supporting you so wholeheartedly while you were busy with the festival." Julian's jaw tightened. The remark felt barbed, like a subtle dig. He offered a tight nod, refusing to rise to the bait. "Sure." A few colleagues drifted by, praising Damien's work. He lapped it up, exuding the charm of a man who believed the world revolved around him. Soon, a hush fell near the dais, where an announcer began welcoming everyone. Julian saw Celine slip away to greet her boss, leaving him momentarily alone. At the buffet, he tried to quell his nerves by sampling hors d'oeuvres, but just as he tasted a small crab puff, he heard laughter behind him, a loud, boisterous cackle that belonged to a clearly inebriated Damien. Julian turned to see him leaning close to Celine, an arm almost draped over her shoulder. The sight stung like a fresh wound. A wave of hot anger flared in Julian's chest. He marched closer in time to catch Damien's slurred voice. "Celine is quite the gem. Hard to believe she was stuck in a quiet suburban life, right?" He raised his glass, half laughing. Who would have thought a little taste of excitement could change everything? Celine shot him a furious look, clearly warning him to shut up. But it was too late. Others were nearby, and they watched with curiosity. Julian cleared his throat. "You have something to say about our marriage, Damien?" His voice shook with pent-up frustration. Damien's grin took on a nasty edge. The alcohol had loosened his filter. "Hey man, I'm just impressed by how easily she adapted to new experiences. She's a natural at living on the edge, more than I can say for some people." A hush spread among the bystanders. Celine's cheeks flamed with embarrassment, while Julian's entire body tensed. He felt as if a fuse had been lit in his chest. "Are you implying?" Julian began, but Damien cut him off, raising his champagne. "Implying? I'm just stating the obvious." He laughed. "You want me to spell it out?" "She's been a delight. It's like she was waiting for the right kind of spark to—" Without thinking, Julian slammed his drink onto a nearby table, liquid sloshing over the rim. "Shut the hell up." The words echoed harshly. A few gasps rose from around them. Damien's eyebrows arched. "Ooh, temper. Guess you're not as calm as you look, buddy." Red-hot fury pulsed in Julian's veins. He lunged forward, grabbing Damien by the lapels. Servers froze mid-step. Someone whispered an alarmed, "Oh God!" Celine yanked at Julian's arm, eyes wide with panic. "Julian, stop!" she hissed. "You're making a scene." Damien raised both hands in mock surrender, smirking. "A scene indeed. But hey, can I blame him? If my wife was—" He never finished the sentence. Julian's fist almost flew, but at the last second he held back, chest heaving. The tension crackled. Finally, he released Damien and staggered a step back, face tight with humiliation. All around them, whispers spread like wildfire. Julian felt exposed, as if standing under a harsh spotlight. He didn't even register Celine's pleading look. Shame and anger roiled in his gut, swallowing the remainder of his rational thought. Without another word, Julian spun on his heel and stormed out. Celine called his name, but he barely heard it over the rush of his own pulse. Pushing through the onlookers, he ignored the frantic stare of passers-by. As the ballroom doors swung closed behind him, he realized he might never look at Celine the same way again. Thunder rumbled low in the distance as Julian slammed his car door and peeled out of the hotel driveway. The city streets gleamed with reflections of neon signs dancing on wet asphalt. It had started drizzling halfway through the gala. Fat raindrops now pelted his windshield in an erratic rhythm. He drove on autopilot, knuckles white on the steering wheel, the memory of Damien's smug face fueling his anger. He wanted to outrun the shame, outrun the stabbing fear that everything Damien hinted at was true. Yet no matter how hard he pressed the gas, he couldn't escape the sinking feeling in his chest. By the time he reached home, the drizzle had turned to a steady downpour, cold and unrelenting. He parked haphazardly in the driveway, stepping out into the rain without bothering to grab an umbrella. Lightning flashed overhead, casting eerie shadows across the suburban cul-de-sac. He barely made it inside when the front door burst open again. Celine stumbled in, drenched, hair plastered to her face. She must have left the gala right after him, chasing him home. She shut the door against the storm, rainwater pooling at her feet. "Julian," she said breathlessly, her voice almost lost in the pounding of his heart. He spun around, eyes red with rage and hurt. "Don't!" he growled. "I don't want to hear it." But she pressed on, stepping closer. "You walked out of there. Everyone was watching. I didn't know what else to do but follow you. We can't just leave things like this." He gave a bitter laugh. "Like what, Celine? Publicly humiliated by your dear Damien, who seems real cozy with you." She flinched. "I never wanted that. He was drunk and out of line, and yet he made it sound like you two are more than just co-workers," Julian snapped. The living room lamp cast flickering shadows on the walls, turning their confrontation into a silent storm of its own. "Damien practically boasted that he's had you. Is it true?" Celine's breath caught. Her eyes brimmed with tears, raindrops clinging to her eyelashes. "Julian, please, it happened once," she choked out, voice quavering. "It was a stupid, stupid mistake during the festival trip. I've been trying to end it, but he's relentless and I—" "Stop!" Julian's hand trembled against his side. Thunder boomed in the distance, punctuating the gravity of her words. "So you admit it." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I never wanted to hurt you. Everything got complicated. Damien was persuasive and I was feeling distant from you. It's not an excuse, just a reason. I swear I didn't mean—" He shook his head, jaw clenched. "So that's it? You cheated because you felt neglected?" Her silence spoke volumes. Outside lightning illuminated the window, illuminating her face for a split second, distorted by regret and fear. He felt something inside him shatter. "Get out," he said, voice eerie in its calm. "Just get your things and go." She reached for his arm, tears mixing with rainwater. "Julian, please." "No," he snarled, stepping away. The brokenness in his eyes mirrored the storm raging outside. "If I stay near you right now, I'll say or do something I regret. So leave." She sobbed softly, rummaging for her purse. "I'll go to a friend's place," she managed, voice ragged. "I'm so sorry." He didn't respond, heart a hollow cavern as he watched her slip out the door into the pouring rain. The dark, wet night swallowed her figure. For a fleeting instant, he almost ran after her memories of their wedding day, their first home-cooked meal together, the silly inside jokes. But then he remembered how she'd shared herself with Damien, that arrogant man who rubbed it in his face. The door clicked shut behind her, and with it, a final blow to the fragile semblance of trust that once anchored their marriage. Julian stood in the center of the living room, the overhead light flickering with each thunderclap. The entire house felt emptier, as if she had taken not just her suitcase, but all the warmth and laughter that had once belonged to them. Slowly, he sank onto the couch, running a hand through his rain-slicked hair. The storm outside showed no sign of stopping, and neither did the turmoil within him. He was left with a single, crushing realization. The life he'd known his marriage, his sense of security had just collapsed in the span of one harrowing night. As lightning cut across the sky, Julian closed his eyes, letting the darkness behind his eyelids echo his turmoil. A bitter question repeated in his mind. Where do I go from here? Julian hadn't opened the blinds in 3 days. Morning or evening, he barely noticed. His once orderly living room now resembled the aftermath of a forgotten house party, empty beer cans scattered on the coffee table, a half-eaten pizza growing stale on the kitchen counter. Since Celine stormed out that rainy night, he'd stopped caring about normal routines. He sat hunched on the couch, gazing blankly at the TV. Some old drama rerun flickered across the screen without sound. Every now and then, he'd catch a glimpse of a couple kissing or reconciling, and that bitter ache would twist inside him again. A buzz on his phone caught his attention. He ignored it at first, but it persisted text notifications, then a call. Finally, he groaned and picked it up. "Julian Gray," he mumbled, voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "Is that how you answer these days?" A warm but concerned tone replied. It was Vanessa Moore, an old college friend and now an attorney practicing downtown. She'd heard tidbits through mutual acquaintances that Julian's life was unraveling. "Vanessa," he sighed, dropping his head back against the couch. "Sorry, I've been preoccupied." "Yeah, no kidding," she said dryly. "I swung by your office. They said you haven't shown up or called in sick. I tried your cell 3 times before you picked up. Look, I'm worried, Jules." He stared at the coffee table where an empty whiskey glass sat beside half-finished sketches from his architecture projects. The lines looked shaky, half-formed. "You don't have to worry about me. I'm just taking some time off." "Sure," Vanessa responded gently. "But if it's about Celine," he snorted. "It's everything. I can't focus at work, can't eat, can't sleep. And every time I close my eyes, I see her with him." His jaw clenched. "Damien Roth, the smug, arrogant—" "Look, I'm not going to pretend I know what you're going through," she interrupted softly. "But I do know letting your life derail won't fix it. You're still married, right? You might consider your legal options if things are heading toward divorce. Or if you want to stand up to that chef jerk, you might need counsel." Julian ran a hand over his stubble, remembering he hadn't shaved in days. The mention of legal options felt jarring, but deep down, he knew ignoring reality wouldn't solve anything. "What's the point, Van?" "She left. The marriage is done. I don't have any fight in me." Silence lingered on the line, then Vanessa's voice softened even more. "Let me at least come by and talk it over. We can figure out next steps. Maybe there's a path to closure." He sighed. Yeah, all right. I guess I could use a real conversation." Within an hour, she appeared at his doorstep, pushing aside the scattered beer cans to sit on the couch. She wore a sensible blazer, her auburn hair pinned neatly back, radiating professional calm in the face of Julian's chaos. The living room light was dim, the air stale. Vanessa took one look around. "This is bad, Jules. You're not yourself." He shrugged, sinking into a half-slump. "I'm just tired of thinking." She set her briefcase on the coffee table and pulled out a small stack of papers. "Look, I know you hate drama, but you might face a bigger storm soon. I've gotten wind that Jason and Associates, the agency managing Damien, has heard about the fight at that corporate event. They suspect you might go public about Celine's affair. It'd ruin Damien's squeaky clean image." Julian stiffened, a flicker of anger stirring. "Squeaky clean, my ass. He practically bragged about sleeping with my wife." Vanessa nodded grimly. "Exactly. They're worried you might talk. Slander suits or hush money, these are tactics they've used before with other controversies. I spoke to a friend in the PR circuit. They want to talk to you." He let out a humorless laugh. "They want to talk to me? I'm the wrong party here." "Doesn't matter," she said, voice firm. "People with money can twist any narrative. Jason and Associates has lawyers who devour small fries. If they think you're a threat to their Star Chef's brand, they'll either buy you off or shut you down." Julian's gaze drifted to the dark television screen, reflections of the overhead light dancing across it. His mind flashed back to the humiliating confrontation with Damien, the betrayal in Celine's eyes. He swallowed hard. "So that's why you're here? To warn me about some corporate bulldozer?" "I'm here because I'm your friend," Vanessa replied, placing a hand on his arm. "And yeah, to warn you. If you want to take a stand, you need to be ready. But first, you've got to pull yourself together. If you stay in this daze, they'll crush you without a second thought." He exhaled shakily, the weight of it all pressing down, 15 years of marriage unraveling, career on the brink, an impending legal onslaught. For the first time in days, he felt a stirring of resolve through the fog of despair. "I won't let them crush me," he muttered, more to himself than Vanessa. "They've already taken too much." Vanessa's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then back at him. "I'm setting up a meeting with one of their representatives. We'll see what they propose. And then you decide. Either you fight or you walk away. But at least you'll be informed." Julian slowly nodded. Maybe he was still furious, still broken, but there was a faint spark inside him. The idea of confronting Damien's team, not as a victim but as someone who refused to be bullied, gave him a sliver of purpose. And he desperately needed anything to cling to. He reached for his phone. The battery icon flickered in the red, just like he felt almost drained. But he had to face the world again. No matter how bitter or bruised, he couldn't let the story end here, among empty beer cans and stale pizza crusts. "Set the meeting," he said quietly. "I'll be ready." Vanessa gave a short nod. "Okay, we'll handle it step by step, and trust me, I've got your back." Outside the window, weak afternoon sunlight peeked through a gap in the blinds. It was the first sign of light Julian had really noticed in days. He stared at that ray, letting it remind him that life, however painful, still moved forward. If this was war, he'd at least go in with his eyes open. 2 days later, Julian stood outside a gleaming glass office tower downtown. The reflection on its surface distorted the blue sky, making it look taller than reality. He tugged at the collar of his jacket, heart thumping. This was the headquarters of Gyson & Associates, the PR and management firm behind Damien's shining career. Vanessa met him at the door, brisk and focused in her professional attire. "All set?" she asked, scanning his face. He forced a nod. "As ready as I'll ever be." They passed through a sleek lobby, stepping onto a plush elevator that whisked them to the 27th floor. Everything smelled of polished steel and expensive cologne. The moment the elevator doors opened, they were greeted by a receptionist with a practiced smile. "Mr. Gray and Miss Moore, correct?" the woman asked crisply. "Right this way, please." They were ushered into a spacious conference room with a panoramic view of the city skyline. Seated at the large glass table were 2 men and a woman. One man wore a tailored suit with a gold tie clip, exuding an air of corporate swagger. The second man seemed older, with calm, watchful eyes. The woman was impeccably dressed in a slim black blazer, her posture impeccably straight. The Goldie man spoke first, extending a hand. "Mr. Gray, Miss Moore, welcome. I'm Jonathan Eckhart, Senior Counsel at Gyson & Associates. This is my colleague Talia Green, Head of Client Relations, and our associate Marcus Vogel." Julian shook hands stiffly. "Julian," he said simply. Vanessa introduced herself, then they all took seats around the table. Jonathan cleared his throat, cutting straight to business. "We understand there was an incident involving our client, Mr. Damien Roth, at a recent corporate event. Possibly some tension that might create negative publicity should the details leak." Julian stiffened. "You mean the fact that he flaunted an affair with my wife in front of a crowd?" A flicker of discomfort crossed Talia's features. "We're aware of the rumors, Mr. Gray. However, we believe it's in everyone's best interest not to escalate this matter. Damien is a high-profile figure, and any scandal could be detrimental for him." She paused pointedly. "And, in turn, for you." Vanessa leaned forward. "Let's not beat around the bush. We know you're prepared to offer something in exchange for Julian's silence. Let's hear it." Jonathan nodded, unruffled. "Precisely. Gyson & Associates is prepared to make a generous financial offer. In return, Mr. Gray would sign a binding non-disclosure agreement, preventing him from discussing or publicizing any allegations about Damien Roth's personal affairs." He slid a crisp folder across the table. "The initial figure is listed here," he said smoothly. "We believe it's quite fair." Julian picked up the folder, glancing at the number printed inside. It was large enough to make him recoil. He swallowed, trying not to let his shock show. This is hush money, plain and simple. A swirl of conflicting emotions caught in his chest, anger, humiliation, but also a faint twinge of desperation. That sum could change his entire life overnight. Vanessa's expression remained steady. This is a starting point? Marcus, the older man, spoke calmly. We expect some negotiation, but the essence is straightforward. Mr. Gray keeps the alleged events strictly private, does not pursue defamation suits or speak to media, and in exchange, receives this settlement. Julian's gaze flicked to the skyscrapers outside the window. He never wanted to be in a position to sell his dignity, but the heartbreak from Celine's betrayal, combined with the dread of a legal war, weighed heavily. The firm's attorneys watched him expectantly, reading his hesitation. Finally, he set the folder aside. "This is," he began, voice tight. "You think you can buy off my pain with a check?" Jonathan spread his hands in a practiced gesture. "We understand how personal this is, Mr. Gray. We also know public lawsuits can be grueling, expensive, and ultimately yield uncertain outcomes for everyone. This settlement offers a clean resolution." Vanessa calmly added, "We'll need time to review the terms. No decision today." Talia nodded, relief in her eyes that the meeting hadn't devolved into a shouting match. "Of course, we're more than willing to give you space to deliberate." As they wrapped up, Jonathan extended another handshake. "Take your time, Mr. Gray. We hope you see the value in a peaceful agreement." Julian stared at him, a bitter taste filling his mouth. "I'll consider it," he muttered. Minutes later, he and Vanessa left the building, stepping onto the bustling downtown sidewalk. Traffic roared by, horns blaring, people scurrying with briefcases and coffee cups. Julian paused at the curb, inhaling the city air, uncertain if it calmed or suffocated him. Vanessa touched his shoulder gently. "You okay?" He managed a hollow laugh. "I'm not sure if I'm more insulted or more tempted. That's a lot of money." She nodded. "I know. This is real. They're basically buying your silence. But if you reject it, they could come after you. Court battles, smear campaigns, these guys play hardball." Julian gazed at the swirling traffic lights, mind spinning. The easy route was to take the money and walk away. But part of him still seethed at how effortlessly Damien might escape consequences. Was that how cheap his pride was? He clenched a fist, recalling the humiliating moment when Damien boasted about taking Celine. "Let's go," he said quietly, stepping off the curb once the walk signal lit. "I need time to think." Vanessa nodded, and they headed back to the parking structure. Julian's thoughts churned the entire ride home. The hush money folder lay on the passenger seat, like a silent invitation. Could he truly set aside the betrayal, the public humiliation, if it meant starting a new life? 2 days after the Gisson and Associates meeting, Julian found himself pacing in his living room again, though this time he'd tidied up. The blinds were open, letting midday sunshine spill across the floor. Empty cans and stale food were cleared away, replaced by a folder of research materials scattered over the coffee table. Vanessa arrived with a quick knock. "Morning," she said briskly. "You doing okay?" He shrugged. "Better than before. You were right. Sitting around in pity won't help. I've been looking into Damien Roth's background or what I can find online, and let's just say I suspect there's more skeletons in his closet." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" Julian showed her a few printed articles from local tabloids in other states. "Nothing conclusive. Just rumors some alleged fling with a married restaurant owner's daughter in Boston. Big hush-hush. Another rumor in Chicago. Always ended quietly." Vanessa frowned, flipping through the papers. "He has a pattern, apparently. Always someone married or engaged someone who'd be too embarrassed to go public. Then hush money or PR spin." "That's what it looks like," Julian said, voice tight with anger. "He's done this, what, multiple times? He tramples on marriages for sport and never suffers consequences." Vanessa tapped her chin. "If we could find someone who's willing to talk, we might have leverage if you want to truly expose him." Julian took a breath. "I reached out on social media quietly to a woman named Ariana Bennett. Someone posted her name on a forum discussing Damien Roth's manipulative behavior. She replied last night, said she'd be open to chat. She might be one of his exes." Vanessa's eyes flashed with interest. "That's promising. We need concrete stories, not just rumors. You sure you want to go down this path? Because if you do, you'll be pushing right back against Gisson and Associates and their hush money offer." Julian's gaze hardened. I can't just let this guy keep doing it. If he seduced my wife, who's next? Another family? Another clueless husband? No, I want the truth out. They arranged a brief video call that afternoon. At 3 p.m., Julian's laptop camera flickered on. A woman with solemn brown eyes and a wary expression appeared on screen, Ariana Bennett. She seemed to be in her mid-30s, wearing a simple sweater, her hair pulled back. "Hi," Ariana began softly. "This is weird for me. I don't usually talk about my past, especially with strangers." Julian managed a reassuring smile. "Thank you for trusting us. I'm Julian, this is Vanessa. We appreciate any information you can share." Ariana nodded. "I heard from a friend that you were dealing with Damien. So yeah, I dated him a few years ago before he got super famous." She paused, swallowing. "He was charming at first, said he wanted to collaborate on some food industry idea. But it turned out he loved the thrill of pursuing women who were already attached." Julian's stomach twisted. "That's exactly what happened to me. My wife, anyway. Go on." Ariana sighed, rubbing her temples. "He made big promises. Then I found out he was also flirting with 2 other women at the same time. When I confronted him, he laughed it off, said it's just business to keep people interested. Later, he threatened to tarnish my reputation if I exposed him, like telling folks I was a gold digger or insane. I caved, moved on quietly." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "So he used intimidation, plus his PR resources to shut you down." "That's right," Ariana said. "He had lawyers contacting me, implying I'd face defamation suits if I even hinted at wrongdoing on his part. I didn't have money or support, so I backed off. I regret it sometimes. Maybe if I'd stood my ground, he wouldn't have kept preying on people." A hush settled. Julian's chest burned with anger, shame, and resolve. This man is a serial manipulator, he thought. "So you're willing to testify or share your story if it goes that far?" Vanessa asked gently. Ariana glanced aside, tension flickering across her face. I'm scared, but maybe it's time someone stood up. If you're serious about confronting him, I'll tell what I know." Julian inhaled, feeling the weight of her words. He realized that going public meant an all-out war against not just Damien, but the powerful machine protecting him. Still, Ariana's testimony might be the key to unveiling the pattern behind his behavior. "Thank you," he said quietly, meeting Ariana's gaze through the screen. "I'm sorry you went through this too. I appreciate your courage." She gave a sad, grateful smile. "Just be careful, Julian." The call ended. Vanessa exhaled, shutting her laptop. "This is big, Jules. If we gather enough evidence, you can threaten to expose him, forcing him and his agency to face real consequences." He stared at the blank screen. "So now I have a choice. Accept their hush money and bury the truth, or risk a scorched earth fight to drag him into the light." Vanessa placed a hand on his shoulder. "I can't decide for you, but I'll support whichever path you pick." Julian's mind whirled with Ariana's story, Celine's betrayal, and the hush money figure. He had never felt so torn justice or personal peace, revenge or closure. One thing was certain. Damien Roth thrived on other people's silence. Maybe it was time someone broke it. A week after speaking with Ariana, Julian caught wind that Damien would headline a boutique culinary expo at a fancy downtown hotel. Smaller scale than the previous gala, it catered to high-end food critics and local restaurateurs. Word of mouth suggested it would be the perfect place for him to shine and for Julian to confront him privately. Vanessa accompanied him, just in case. They slipped into the expo hall, the air thick with the aroma of gourmet sauces and sizzling meats. Upscale booths lined the walls, each staffed by a chef or brand representative. Damien's station was at the back, a small crowd already milling about to watch him craft his signature flambe dish. Julian hung back, heart pounding. Memories of the humiliating brawl at that company party stung, but he had Ariana's story in his pocket, literal notes from their interview. Now he wanted answers. No more running away. They waited until Damien finished a short presentation, posing for a few photos with fans. Then the crowd dispersed. Vanessa patted Julian's arm for courage, and he strode forward. Damien turned, spotting him. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, soon replaced by a smirk. "Well, if it isn't Julian Gray, I'd say it's nice to see you, but we both know that's not true." Julian's fists balled at his sides, but he forced calm. "We need to talk, privately." Damien raised an eyebrow, then flicked his gaze to Vanessa. "Your lawyer sidekick, I assume? Fine. 5 minutes. Follow me." He led them through a side door into a service hallway behind the expo. Large metal racks filled with catering supplies stood around. The noise from the main hall muted. The air was cooler, tinged with disinfectant. Damien crossed his arms. "Spit it out. I'm busy." Julian took a breath. "I know about your pattern. Ariana Bennett, Boston, Chicago pursuing attached women, covering it up with hush money. You're not fooling everyone." Damien's smug grin faltered for a split second before he recovered. "That's a bold accusation. Hope you have proof because I could sue for defamation, buddy." Vanessa stepped forward, calm but steely. "We have witness accounts from multiple parties. If Julian decides to go public, it won't be some rumor. People will see the real you." Damien's eyes narrowed. "Oh, I get it. This is your petty revenge for me and Celine?" Julian's anger flared, but he kept his composure. "She was my wife. You wrecked my marriage, acted like it was a game, and you've done it before. I'm done letting you hide." Damien let out a soft, mocking laugh. "She wasn't exactly a saint, man. It takes two. Don't pretend you're innocent." He leaned in, voice dropping to a taunt. "Maybe if you'd been more of a man, she wouldn't have strayed." Julian's muscles tensed. He could almost see red. Yet he recalled Vanessa's warning violence would only help Damien's side. So he exhaled, channeling his fury into words. "Keep telling yourself that. Meanwhile, we can blow this wide open. All your NDAs, your hush money, your carefully curated image, it'll crumble." Damien shrugged in feigned indifference. "So you think? People love me. PR can spin anything. Even if you drag me through the mud, I'll come out shining. Everyone has a price, remember?" Vanessa interjected. "You might be surprised how quickly sponsors drop a chef who preys on married women. Ariana Bennett's testimony alone would cause a PR nightmare. Julian's story will amplify it." For a flicker of a moment, real concern clouded Damien's face, but his arrogance returned in an instant. "All right," he said coolly. "Try your best. Just know I have lawyers too, and if I decide to bury you in lawsuits, you'll drown in legal fees for years." A tense silence filled the hallway. Julian recognized the truth in Damien's threat. This man had endless resources, yet he refused to cower. "Maybe, or maybe your empire falls first." Damien smirked, stepping closer until he was practically nose-to-nose with Julian. "You know what your problem is, Gray? You're still acting like a victim. Newsflash, your wife was bored. I offered excitement, she took it. That's not on me alone." Julian's pulse hammered, but he refused to throw the first punch. "Believe what you want. People will see your pattern soon enough." Damien's lips curved into a sneer. "Good luck, hero. Let me know how that works out when your finances dry up in court." He turned on his heel, exiting back toward the expo. Julian watched him go, adrenaline coursing. The confrontation felt both liberating and terrifying, like stepping on stage to deliver a speech without notes. Vanessa rested a hand on his shoulder. "You did well. No violence, no meltdown. Now you see how he reacts when cornered. He'll probably double down, but we're prepared." Julian closed his eyes, exhaling shakily. "I never thought I'd be in a war with a celebrity chef over my marriage." She gave him a faint smile. "Life's full of surprises. Let's get out of here. We've got decisions to make. Either we push forward publicly or consider Jason and Associates' hush offer. But either way, it's your call." They left the service hallway, heading outside into the late afternoon sun. A breeze caught Julian's hair, and for a moment he felt the weight of the future pressing in. Court battles, potential defamation suits, or the easy route of hush money, none of it promised genuine closure. He gazed at the bright sky, recalling the vow he once made to himself. He wouldn't let this betrayal define him forever. But maybe fighting for truth was exactly the step he needed to finally break free. One thing was certain. The path ahead would only grow more complicated. Gom Chuang 1316, Boy Kan Hien Tai, Loi Van Tieng Angangui, Nheo Hoi Toai, Kong Tiet Lo Truok Noi Dunkak Fan Sao, Chi Dua Trendan, I Fan 4. Julian arrived at Solterra Architecture, the mid-sized firm he'd worked at for years, with a sense of dread coiling in his stomach. For the past week, he'd been half absent physically showing up, but mentally consumed by his personal chaos. Now, rumors swirled that some potential clients were uneasy about his recent public drama. He stepped into the lobby, noticing a few coworkers offer awkward nods before burying their faces in paperwork. The tension was palpable. By the time he reached his desk, Brenda Parks, a project manager he once got along with, approached with a sympathetic grimace. "Julian, you got a minute?" she asked softly. "Carl, our department head, wants to see you." Julian's pulse sped up. "Sure," he said, steeling himself. If this was about losing clients, he needed to keep calm. They wound through a glass-walled corridor, passing the open-concept studio where architects pored over large blueprints. The usual hum of creativity felt weighed down by curiosity and pitying glances cast in Julian's direction. He pretended not to notice. When they reached Carl Hensley's corner office, Brenda gave Julian a quick nod and left. Carl, a tall man with graying temples, waved Julian inside. The office was tidy, with scenic photos of completed buildings on the walls. Carl took a seat behind his desk, folding his hands. "Julian," Carl began, "I'm concerned about you, and frankly, so is the board. I've received calls from 2 prospective clients who heard about that blow-up at the company gala. They're worried about, well, your stability." Julian clenched his jaw. "With respect, Carl, my personal issues don't affect the quality of my work." Carl exhaled through his nose. "I know. You're one of our best architects, but public perception matters, especially with bigger contracts. They see your name in the gossip column, some affair scandal, rumored lawsuits, and they get skittish." Julian's chest tightened. He recalled how Damien and Jason and associates were pushing hush money to keep him from stirring the pot. Now the ripples were hitting his career. Damien's not the only threat. My own bosses might force me to quiet down. The injustice tasted bitter. "So what exactly are you implying?" Julian asked. Carl spread his hands in a half-shrug. "Look, the partners are hoping you can handle this quietly. We value you, but we also need to protect the firm's image. If you escalate a legal battle with that chef or his agency, it could drag Solterra Architecture into a PR mess. Sponsors and clients talk, you know?" A dull ache formed behind Julian's eyes. "So you're telling me to drop it or risk my job?" Carl grimaced. "I'm saying the firm can't afford negative headlines about one of our senior architects. You have every right to your personal life, but we'd strongly advise a less confrontational approach." Silence thickened. Julian's mind reeled with frustration. He'd spent years building a reputation for innovative design, leading complex projects. And now, because of Damien's arrogance and Celine's betrayal, he was on the verge of losing everything. "I see," he finally said, voice tight. Carl nodded, voice gentling. "We're not threatening you, but put yourself in our shoes. If you become embroiled in a scandal or a nasty lawsuit, it reflects on us. We have to be realistic." Julian rose, forcing a thin smile. "Thanks for the honesty." He left the office with tension radiating through his shoulders. Back at his desk, he tried to focus on a set of draft plans, but the lines blurred. Every so often, a coworker's gaze would flick toward him, curiosity flickering in their eyes. By late afternoon, he gave up pretending to concentrate. He gathered his things and left early. Outside, a warm breeze rustled the trees lining the street. Normally, fresh air and sunshine uplifted him, but now it felt stifling. He couldn't go home to mope on the couch again. He needed clarity. So he drove to a nearby coffee shop, a cozy place with exposed brick and vintage armchairs. He settled by the window, sipping a latte as he mulled over the ultimatum: keep fighting or quietly accept a settlement. Halfway through his drink, Vanessa called. He answered, describing the conversation with Carl in a weary tone. She gave a soft hum of sympathy. "I figured they'd pressure you to keep things under wraps. Corporations want stability, not courtroom drama." He pinched the bridge of his nose. "It's so unfair. Damien's the one who humiliated me. Now I'm the liability?" "Yeah," she sighed. "That's how it goes sometimes. Look, let's talk strategy. We could gather more evidence against Damien to scare him into a real apology, maybe reduce the hush money talk. But if you escalate, you risk losing your job. Are you prepared? The question weighed heavily. He pictured Carl's concerned expression, the partner's caution, the potential meltdown of his entire career. Then he remembered Ariana's testimony and the hatred flaring in his gut at the idea of letting Damien walk free, unscathed. I don't know, he admitted quietly. I need to think. Vanessa's voice softened. Take your time, Jules. There's no easy fix. But I'm here if you need me. The worst thing you can do is let stress consume you. Maybe we figure out a balanced approach. They said their goodbyes, and Julian left the coffee shop soon after. Driving home, the city lights flickered on against the dusk sky. He stared at the changing traffic signals, feeling as though each green or red light mirrored his life's choices: go or stop. When he pulled into his driveway, the house looked darker than usual. He realized that was exactly how he felt, swallowed by a dim uncertainty. At least now he knew what was at stake. Not just his pride, but his livelihood. The hush money had never been more tempting. A few evenings later, as Julian trudged into his living room, the silence felt heavier than ever. Since the fiasco, he'd grown used to the empty house, no footsteps upstairs, no random calls from Celine announcing she'd be home late. But tonight, the absence grated on his nerves, reminding him of everything that had gone wrong. He tossed his keys on the kitchen counter when his phone vibrated. Celine calling. His heart lurched, a chaotic mix of anger, longing, and dread. He stared at the screen, debating whether to ignore it. Finally, he accepted the call. Yeah? Julian, hi, came her tentative voice. I'm sorry. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. He swallowed, tension coiling in his chest. Then why are you calling? She hesitated. I need to pick up the rest of my stuff. And A shaky exhale crackled over the line. Could we talk? Just for a moment? His first instinct was to refuse, but something about her quivering tone made him relent. Fine. When? Now. I'm outside, she confessed. His stomach flipped. He hadn't heard her car. Maybe she'd parked up the street, afraid of his reaction. All right, come in. A minute later, the front door creaked. Celine stepped into the hallway, looking exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her once vibrant hair in a messy bun. She clutched a small tote bag, shifting on her feet. Julian leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You said you want to talk? She nodded, swallowing hard. Yes, and to grab a few boxes from the garage, my old files, clothes I left behind. She paused, glancing at him with something like guilt. I'm sorry. For everything. He let out a scoff. A little late for that, isn't it? Her eyes flickered with pain. I know. I'm not here to beg for forgiveness. I want you to know I feel terrible about how things turned out. I never intended to get involved with Damien that way. It spiraled. Julian's jaw clenched. Yet you did. And now I'm left dealing with threats from his agency, hush money offers, pressure at my job. She looked down. Jason and Associates is pushing me too, she admitted. They expect me to keep quiet, or they'll bury me in legal fees if I speak out about any inside info. I'm actually considering quitting. I can't keep working in that environment. He tried not to let sympathy break through his anger, but her worn-out expression tugged at something in him. So you want out? Celine nodded, tears glistening. That agency's toxic. They protect Damien at all costs. I've seen how they manipulate the narrative. When I realized they'd throw me under the bus if it helped him, I realized I was just a pawn. Julian exhaled a shaky breath. So you're leaving? Then what? She shrugged, voice cracking. I don't know, but I can't keep doing this. Damien's twisted the story, made it seem like I chased him for fame. The guilt is killing me. I already broke our marriage. She paused, choking back a sob. Anyway, I just wanted you to know I'm done with them. A raw hush fell. Part of Julian wanted to lash out. You chose him over me, now you're paying the price. But instead, he found himself studying her face. She looked genuinely remorseful, shadows of sorrow etched into her features. What do you expect from me? He asked, voice flat. She shook her head. Nothing. except maybe hearing me out. And if there's anything I can do to fix this disaster, God, I know it's too late for us, but I want to at least do the right thing. If you decide to fight Jason and Associates or Damien, I won't stand in your way." He stared at her for a long moment, conflict raging inside. Seeing her vulnerability reminded him of the years they shared before everything collapsed, but the wound still felt fresh. Finally, he nodded stiffly. "Okay, thanks for telling me." She gave a broken smile. "I guess I'll get my things. Then I'll go." He pointed her toward the garage, then returned to the living room, sinking onto the couch. A swirl of emotions battered him: anger, pity, maybe a flicker of compassion. She regrets it all, but can I ever trust her? After a short while, she emerged with a small cardboard box cradled in her arms. She set it by the door, pausing as if to speak again. "Julian, for whatever it's worth, I truly am sorry." Her voice was barely above a whisper. He gave a curt nod, keeping his arms folded. "I believe you, but it doesn't change what happened." Her eyes misted, but she didn't argue. With a trembling breath, she opened the door. "Take care," she managed. The door clicked shut, leaving him in silence. A note on the kitchen table caught his eye. He realized she must have left it when she first stepped in. He walked over, picked it up. "I wish we could start over someday, but I know it may be impossible. I'm sorry. C." He let out a trembling exhale, frustration mixing with an odd ache of nostalgia. Part of him wanted to tear the note to shreds. Another part ached for the time when their biggest fights were over mundane things, like whose turn it was to do laundry. In the end, he tucked the note into a drawer. She's sorry. She wants out of Jason. Fine. But what do I want? Outside, night had settled, the windows reflecting darkness. He felt a deep weariness, but also a faint, uncertain sense of closure. Maybe her departure wasn't total redemption, but it was something. Julian woke early the following Monday, restless after a fitful sleep. Around 8 a.m., he got a call from Vanessa, her excitement practically buzzing through the phone. "Jules?" she said in a rush. "I stumbled on something big. I've been combing through public records, old sponsorship deals, filings for Jason and Associates, and I found anomalies. Tax irregularities, misreported expenses. A friend at the City Tribune hinted there's an active investigation." He sat up, heart thumping. "Investigation into Jason?" "Yeah," she confirmed. "Apparently, local authorities suspect they've been diverting sponsor funds or cooking their books. It's hush-hush, but if it breaks publicly, they'll be too busy defending themselves to worry about you." A cold thrill shot through him. So they might collapse under their own wrongdoing. Vanessa's voice brimmed with cautious optimism. "Possibly. If that happens, they won't have the resources or appetite to pursue hush-money deals or intimidation tactics. Also, if the media swarms them for financial crimes, Damien's scandalous behavior might become secondary or overshadowed by the bigger corporate meltdown." Julian paced across his living room, eyes flicking to the half-open blinds letting in streaks of morning light. Could this be the opening he needed? He pictured Jason and Associates scrambling to protect themselves from a high-profile financial scandal, leaving him free from their threats. "So what's our move?" he asked. Vanessa paused. "We could wait and let the investigation explode. Meanwhile, you hold off on signing any hush agreement. But there's a risk. If Jason goes under, the hush money disappears. Or if you try to blow the whistle now, you might accelerate their collapse but lose your chance at the settlement. It's your call. Justice or financial security." Julian exhaled, mind spinning. Damien's empire might come crashing down, but if I hold out for hush money, I'll be complicit in letting him walk. On the other hand, if I expose them wholeheartedly, I might end up with nothing. He pressed a hand to his forehead, the moral weight pressing in. "So I either watch them burn or take their money to secure my future." "That's the gist," Vanessa said gently. "I know it's tough. I can't decide for you. But you deserve clarity on the stakes." After they hung up, he slumped onto the couch. The phone lay beside him, screen dark. For weeks, he'd wrestled with choices that offered no perfect outcome. Now the path forked again, in an even more complicated way. He spent the afternoon rifling through old photos and documents. Something in him wanted closure, not just vengeance. But money could cushion the blow of his disintegrating marriage, his precarious job situation, maybe even help him start fresh. Am I willing to let Damien keep his squeaky clean image in exchange for that? As evening fell, he discovered an email from Ariana Bennett, the ex-girlfriend of Damien who'd confided in him earlier. She wrote, "Heard rumors about an investigation. If Jason and Associates goes down, I'll happily testify. I'm tired of them escaping accountability. But I get that you might need the settlement. I won't judge either way. Just do what's best for you. Ariana." Julian felt a pang. Ariana was braver than she realized, stepping up after years of being silenced. Maybe there was a chance to bring the truth out, but his finances, his job security, they loomed as real concerns. He pictured Carl's firm stance, "Don't stir more trouble." Next came the hush money folder, which still lay in a drawer, waiting. By 10 p.m., he was still restless, the house silent except for the hum of the fridge. He stepped outside into the backyard where a few stars glimmered above the suburban glow. The cool air nipped at his skin as he wrestled with the question, am I truly after justice, or just a soft landing? He closed his eyes, recalling the heartbreak of Celine's betrayal, the humiliation from Damien's sneers, the pressure from his own company. It all converged into one moment. On the horizon, he sensed a storm gathering. If the scandal broke wide open, everyone at Jason would be in panic mode, possibly dragging Damien's brand through the mud too. But do I have the courage to risk everything for that truth? Midnight found Julian in his dimly lit living room, the glow from a single floor lamp casting long shadows across the walls. He couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts tumbled through his mind like restless ghosts. He cleared some space on the coffee table, pushing aside architecture drafts and leftover takeout. Then he laid out 2 critical sets of documents. The hush agreement from Jason and Associates, detailing the huge payout if he signed away his right to speak against Damien. Vanessa's notes about the brewing financial scandal, Ariana's contact info, and the potential channels to expose wrongdoing. He stared at them for a long minute, the hush money shining like a golden ticket to a new start. Could he disclaim his moral outrage for a chance at stability, especially after losing so much? Take the money, fix your life, hush up. The argument was tempting, but every time he thought about letting Damien walk, that memory of public humiliation flared anew. Damien's arrogant grin, his mocking comments about taking Celine, Ariana's stories about being threatened. The idea that this man would continue unscathed churned Julian's gut. He breathed in, recalling the painful scene with Celine weeping in the doorway, or Ariana's trembling voice admitting how she'd been cornered by PR threats. A wave of sorrow and anger clashed in his chest. "I can't just stand by," he muttered, voice lost in the empty house. His phone buzzed with a short text from Vanessa. "Client from this morning. They confirmed they want you as lead architect if you keep a low profile. Don't do anything rash without telling me. Just a reminder, your job might hinge on staying quiet." He closed his eyes, leaning his head back against the couch. This was it, the final push. Hush for job security, or speak for justice. He pictured Carl's worried face, Ariana's determined expression, Celine's remorseful apology. Then there was the looming question. Who do I want to be when this is over? Outside, the wind picked up, rattling a tree branch against the window. The soft tapping mirrored his heartbeat. He rose from the couch, flicked off the floor lamp, and let the darkness envelop the room. In the faint streetlight glow, he crossed to a tall window overlooking the quiet suburban street. His reflection stared back, a man caught between heartbreak and defiance. Maybe Celine's betrayal had broken him, but he was still standing, still had choices. He pressed a hand to the cool glass, recalling the old days when his biggest worry was meeting project deadlines. Now it's about moral lines and personal survival. He imagined facing Damien again if he took the hush money. Could he stand looking himself in the mirror, knowing he'd sold out? Or if he risked it all, would he regret losing a financial safety net in a world that had grown hostile? In that hush, he felt a faint spark of clarity. The heartbreak had taught him something. Sometimes you choose what helps you sleep at night, even if it's not the easiest path. He whispered to the empty room, "I have to decide fight or fold." His phone lay on the table, the hush agreement next to it like an unspoken challenge. He touched the contract's cover, exhaling shakily. Damien thinks everyone has a price, but maybe not everyone, or not for everything. At last, he stepped away, letting the table remain as it was. He'd do one more night of reflection, gather his courage. Tomorrow he'd call Vanessa to set that final meeting. The next day, he would choose, to sign or not, to bury the truth, or risk letting it out. His chest felt tight as he climbed the stairs. The entire house seemed to hold its breath. Before entering his bedroom, he paused at a framed photo in the hallway him and Celine years ago, beaming at the camera. The memory stung, but it also reminded him he wasn't the same man anymore. He flicked off the hallway light. Alone in the silent darkness, he realized tomorrow would be a turning point. One path led to an uneasy peace, the other to a storm he might not weather unscathed. But whichever he chose, at least it would be his decision, not forced by fear or heartbreak. Pushing open the bedroom door, he felt the night air drifting in through a slightly open window. A calm hush enveloped him. He sank onto the bed, letting the weight of the day fall away. Tomorrow, the final battle would commence. He'd face Jason and associates, weigh the new scandal, consider Celine's regret, and he'd either lay down his sword or fight for the truth. The morning air was surprisingly crisp as Julian stepped onto his front porch, coffee mug in hand. He'd barely slept, thoughts circling around the upcoming meeting with Jason and associates, the one that might seal his fate with a hush money deal. But before he could even process those worries, his phone buzzed with a text from Celine. "I officially resigned today. Could we talk?" He stared at the message, heart thudding. Resigned? That meant she'd truly quit the agency that had been defending Damien, the same PR machine fueling the hush agreement. He typed back a short reply, "Sure. When?" Not sure if he felt relief or a twist of dread. Within an hour, Celine pulled up in front of his house, looking drained but oddly resolute. She wore a simple navy blouse and jeans, her hair tied back in a low ponytail, a far cry from the polished image she'd maintained during her corporate event days. They stood by the sidewalk, neither quite ready to invite the other inside. A faint wind rustled the trees, carrying a soft tang of damp leaves. Celine's voice was subdued. "I left the company this morning, turned in my resignation letter. HR tried to talk me out of it, but I can't keep working in that environment." Julian took a cautious sip of coffee. "What changed? I mean, last time we talked, you mentioned you wanted out, but I didn't think you'd do it so soon." She exhaled, crossing her arms. Ever since news of a potential financial investigation started swirling, the higher-ups went into panic mode. They demanded staff loyalty pledges, hush orders about anything that might damage the company image. She shook her head. "I couldn't. Not after everything." He studied her expression, haunted, yes, but also steadier than before. "So they're unraveling?" Celine nodded, eyes flashing with frustration. "It's bad. Sponsors are pulling back. Damien is furious. He wants them to cover up all his personal misdeeds, but with the financial scandal looming, resources are thin. Everyone's turning on each other." Her voice grew quiet. "Anyway, I had to go. I should have done it sooner." A part of Julian felt a flicker of pity. Another part, still stung by her betrayal, resisted the urge to comfort her. "So you're out. Good for you, I guess." She offered a wan smile. "I know it doesn't fix what I did, but I won't be part of something that keeps hurting people." She paused, studying him. "Listen, I heard that some details about Jason's tax fraud might break soon. People inside the company are scared. If they go down, maybe you won't have to sign anything. You'll be free." He nodded, swirling the coffee in his mug. "That's what I'm hoping, but I'm also tempted by their settlement. My boss at the architecture firm basically said, keep it quiet or risk your career." He gestured vaguely. "It's a mess." Celine brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "I'm sorry you're in that position because of me. And Damien." He stiffened but managed a low sigh. "Look, it's not all on you, but yeah, it's a nightmare." For a moment they stood in silence. Sunlight filtered through the clouds, illuminating the subtle lines of exhaustion beneath her eyes. Finally, she cleared her throat. Anyway, I just wanted you to know I'm done with Jason. I'm not covering for them or Damien. You deserve better. And if you need me to, I'll confirm any shady stuff I witnessed. I mean, I saw enough to know they're knee-deep in corruption. Julian looked away, emotions tangled. On one hand, her willingness to speak up might help bury Damien once and for all. On the other, the personal wound remained raw. I appreciate it, he said quietly. We'll see if it comes to that. Her phone buzzed, likely a friend or relative checking in. She casted a quick glance, then offered a faint, apologetic smile. I should go. I have a lot to figure out, new job, new place. She hesitated. And we still have to settle our, marriage. He swallowed. Right. The lawyers can guide us on the next steps. She nodded. Thanks for letting me talk. Good luck, Julian. She walked back to her car, started the engine, and drove off. As the taillights disappeared down the street, Julian felt the strangest blend of pity, lingering anger, and maybe a hint of relief. She's left the company. One more piece of the puzzle shifting. His gaze drifted to the skyline where the sun peeked from behind the clouds. He couldn't deny a certain sense of validation. Celine's departure signaled that Jason and Associates truly was on shaky ground. Maybe justice is on its way. A few days later, Julian found himself in a cozy corner booth at Pine Grove Cafe, a small coffee shop with rustic wooden tables and potted plants along the windows. The aroma of freshly brewed espresso mingled with the sweet scent of pastries. He'd picked this place for a neutral ground public enough to keep tensions low, private enough for a serious talk. Celine arrived soon after, wearing a simple gray sweater and jeans. She carried a slim folder, probably containing legal documents. Her eyes scanned the cafe until she spotted him. As she slid into the seat across from him, he noticed how quiet her demeanor was, like she was bracing for impact. Thanks for meeting, she said, voice subdued. He offered a nod. Might as well handle this in person. The lawyer suggested we come to an agreement first, then finalize the paperwork. She looked down at the menu, though she didn't seem interested in ordering. Right. I appreciate you being civil. After everything, I wasn't sure if you'd ever want to see me again. He shrugged, tension knotting his shoulders. We had 15 years together. Might as well end it responsibly. The word tasted bitter, but he forced it out. A barista approached, and they both ordered simple coffees, not wanting to complicate the moment. Once the barista left, Celine placed the folder on the table. So, I've been speaking with my lawyer. We can do a no-fault divorce. We don't have any kids, no major disputes about real estate. Your house is in your name from before the marriage. I'm not contesting that. Julian studied her expression, seeing both sorrow and resignation. And the bank accounts? She sighed. We can divide the joint account. There's not too much in it, but I'm not expecting half. Honestly, I just want enough to get on my feet. I'm staying with a friend for now. He nodded, glancing at the folder. I'm not out to ruin you financially. We can split what's fair. As for the house, it was my parents'. I'd prefer to keep it. She raised her gaze, tears threatening. I understand. I don't have the heart to fight you over it. A pause lingered, heavy with memories. The clink of cups behind the cafe counter provided a soft background hum. Finally, he cleared his throat. Why? Why did it happen? He asked, voice nearly a whisper. All those nights you were busy at events, the closeness with Damien, was it just attention? She winced, as if he'd struck her. I guess I felt overshadowed, craving excitement, or I don't know. It was stupid. I'm not excusing it. Her voice trembled. I never thought I'd hurt you like this. Damien was charming, persistent, and I was weak. He exhaled a shaky breath, forcing down the surge of anger and heartbreak. I loved you, you know. Maybe I got complacent. But I never thought... She reached across the table, but he gently pulled his hand away. A tear slipped down her cheek. I'm so sorry, Julian. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wish I could take it all back. The barista returned with their coffees, setting the cups down quietly, oblivious to the emotional tension. Once she left, they sipped in awkward silence. Eventually, Julian placed the mug aside. So the papers. We separate now, see how it goes. The lawyers handle the formalities? Celine nodded, dabbing her eyes with a napkin. I guess so. If after some months we see no chance of reconciliation, we'll sign the final divorce documents. That's what the lawyer recommended, a transitional period. He couldn't deny a pang of regret, remembering better times, but too much had broken. All right, we'll do that. She opened the folder, sliding a few pages toward him. These outline the main terms. We can tweak if needed. I just want to keep things calm. He scanned the paperwork, reading legal jargon about property rights, spousal support, distribution of funds. The reality of it all felt surreal, 15 years undone by a few pages. Looks fair, he said softly. I'll have my lawyer review. Celine's shoulders seemed to slump, as if a weight pressed on her. Thank you, Julian. And I'm sorry. She repeated the apology, voice raw. If you ever need anything, I'll be here. Though I doubt you want anything to do with me. He stared at the swirling foam in his coffee, trying not to drown in emotion. It's complicated, he admitted. We'll see how life goes. They wrapped up the meeting quietly, exchanging minimal words about practical details when she'd collect any leftover items, how to handle joint bills. As they stood to leave, she gave him a trembling gaze, one last attempt at connection. Take care of yourself, she whispered. Same to you, he said, heart twisting. I once imagined growing old together, not parting ways in a cafe, but this was reality now. He watched her walk out, shoulders hunched, and felt a surge of conflicting feelings, anger, relief, sadness, finality. By the time he exited into the midday light, the documents in hand, he realized a new stage had begun. They were on the path to dissolving the marriage. Maybe it was for the best, though the ache in his chest didn't lessen. At least we did it calmly, he told himself, though no calm could erase the scars. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the windows of Vanessa Moore's law office, highlighting the minimalist decor, sleek shelves, a few potted plants, and framed legal certificates. Julian sat across from Vanessa at a polished wooden desk. The hush agreement from Jason and Associates lay in front of them, an unsettling presence. Vanessa glanced over the final draft, tapping a pen against her notepad. They've increased their offer, she noted quietly, likely because the scandal at Jason is heating up. They want to shut you up before more leaks appear. Julian swallowed. That's a lot of money, he murmured, scanning the updated figures. It surpassed even the initial huge sum he'd seen earlier. Vanessa nodded. It could wipe away any mortgage or debts, let you start your own firm if you want. But remember the terms. You cannot disclose any detail about Damien's affair with Celine, nor any suspicion of wrongdoing at Jason. You sign, you stay silent possibly forever. He ran a hand through his hair, remembering Ariana's story, the moral weight. What about Ariana's testimony and everything we uncovered? If I sign, I can't help her expose Damien. Vanessa grimaced. Exactly. You'd have to drop your involvement in any public or legal revelation about him. Ariana might continue on her own, but you'd be legally muzzled. He slumped back in the chair, heart pounding with conflicting emotions. And if I don't sign, I risk a messy lawsuit. My architecture firm might drop me. I get no financial cushion. Vanessa set down her pen, leaning forward. There's also the chance Jason collapses under the finance scandal. Then they might not even chase you, and you'd be free. But that's not guaranteed. Silence thickened. Outside, city traffic hummed, a reminder that life moved on regardless of his turmoil. Julian pictured all he'd lost: his marriage, his peace of mind. He also pictured the potential freedom that money could buy, paying off debts, maybe launching that dream architecture studio he once fantasized about. He closed his eyes, inhaling. I'm so torn. I want justice, but I also want to move on. Vanessa reached out, lightly touching his hand. No one can make this call for you. Sometimes letting go is also a form of self-preservation. He opened his eyes, scanning the hush agreement's official stamps. Then he recalled the scathing look on Damien's face. Does letting him escape consequence make me complicit, or is it simply cutting losses? Time seemed to slow as he reached for a pen, hand trembling. All right, he whispered, voice thick. I'll sign. I can't keep fighting forever. My job's at risk, and I need a fresh start. Let Ariana proceed if she wants. I just can't wage this war alone. Vanessa's expression turned solemn, but supportive. I understand. Steeling himself, Julian flipped to the signature page, pen scratching across the dotted line. Each stroke felt like a concession, a silent agreement not to speak of his own heartbreak. When he finished, he let out a shaky breath, as though exhaling a final piece of resentment. Vanessa gathered the documents, exuding a careful professionalism. I'll send these to their legal team. Once the money transfers, your silence is binding. He leaned back in the chair, a swirl of relief and sorrow washing over him. I guess that's it. Vanessa offered a small, sad smile. You're free from their legal threats, but be kind to yourself if you feel regret or second-guessing. This is a major decision. He nodded. Thanks, Vanessa, for everything. He stood, half expecting to feel lighter. Instead, his chest tightened with an odd emptiness. I sold my voice to the people who humiliated me. Before he left, she gripped his shoulder gently. Don't see it as selling out. You're securing your future, focusing on healing. And trust me, life can still punish Damien in ways you won't control. He gave a muted shrug, stepping into the corridor. Outside the office windows, the sky glowed with the last vestiges of sunset, casting oranges and pinks across the city skyline. He gazed at that horizon, wondering if the hush agreement was truly a path to freedom or just another chain. As he walked to the elevator, he realized something. The raging anger that once fueled him had dimmed. In its place was a numb acceptance. Perhaps that was the cost of moving on, losing a piece of righteous fire. But at least now I can pick up the pieces of my life without constant fear. Barely a week had passed since Julian signed the hush deal when news broke across local media outlets. Jason and Associates was under formal investigation for tax evasion and embezzlement of sponsorship funds. Headlines splashed across the internet. Prominent PR firm faces allegations of financial misconduct. Julian discovered the story one morning as he sipped coffee, scrolling through his phone. Article after article detailed how anonymous sources leaked internal documents to the press, revealing suspicious money transfers and doctored accounting records. The big reveal: Jason had funneled event sponsorship money into hidden accounts, forging receipts along the way. He felt an unexpected jolt of relief, and maybe quiet satisfaction. So the scandal's out in the open. They can't hush this one. Moments later, his phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Jason meltdown in progress. They'll be too busy defending themselves to bother you. Congrats. You're off their radar for good. He exhaled, a slight grin tugging at his lips. Over the next day or two, more revelations emerged. Investigators combed through emails, suspicious budgets, and employee testimonies. Jason and Associates' top executives scrambled for damage control, releasing statements of denial. But sponsors started dropping them like hot coals. As for Damien Roth, he found himself entangled by association. His face flashed on morning shows, anchor voices dripping with speculation. Did star chef Damien benefit from these questionable sponsorship deals? How much did he know? Some networks halted negotiations for his upcoming cooking show, pending further investigation. Julian watched from the sidelines, bound by his hush contract to say nothing about the affair. But he didn't need to speak. The avalanche of corruption overshadowed even the rumor of extramarital scandal. Damien's carefully curated brand took a beating, fans questioning how clean or authentic he really was. One afternoon, a colleague at Julian's architecture firm, Brenda, sidled up to him with a wide-eyed grin. "Hey, you see what's happening to that fancy PR agency? Sheesh, karma, right?" Julian just nodded, a calm neutrality on his face. Inside, a quiet sense of closure unfurled. He wasn't gloating exactly, but the knowledge that Damien was finally facing consequences well. It felt like cosmic justice. Damien's downfall arrived without me lifting a finger. At the same time, the hush money from Jason had already hit his bank account. One swirl of awkwardness lingered. I got paid to keep quiet, yet they're crashing anyway. He tried not to dwell on it. The settlement gave him an escape route from constant fear of lawsuit, plus enough financial cushion to consider big changes in his life. He took a walk during lunch, letting the fresh air clear his head. With Jason in chaos, the threat to his job eased. Carl, his department head, had even given him a nod of approval that morning, saying, "Glad you're focusing on your projects again, Julian." Now he stood at a small park near the office, gazing at children playing on swings, leaves rustling overhead. Maybe I can finally breathe. He recalled the unraveling of his marriage, the searing pain of betrayal. Then he remembered how it led him to this fork in the road. By signing that hush deal, he'd chosen to step away from the fight, yet the universe had a way of balancing the scales anyway. Damien might not be fully destroyed, but his star power had dimmed. Jason and Associates face possible bankruptcy or reorganization. No matter how big you are, you can't outrun your own dishonesty. In the quiet hush of the park, Julian closed his eyes, feeling the breeze against his cheeks. A gentle sense of acceptance settled over him. He'd lost a marriage, but maybe he'd found a new sense of self. No more anguish over who believed him or who judged him. Freed from the scandal, he could rebuild. A day later, he called Vanessa and confirmed the final steps for the hush agreement. She simply replied, "We're done. Funds cleared. They have bigger fish to fry." A subdued sense of finality fluttered in his chest. No more illusions of revenge. "I'm done fighting." That same week, he wrote a note to his boss, Carl, politely declining the notion that he remained silent on personal issues. "I'm not seeking to broadcast drama, but my personal life is my own," he'd said calmly in a short meeting. Carl had nodded, acknowledging that with Jason's meltdown, it was no longer such a threat. As he walked out of the office that evening, the sky painted in soft purple twilight, Julian paused to take in the moment. This is how it ends. Damien's show canceled, Jason flailing, Celine forging her path alone, and he stood on the threshold of something new. Maybe an independent architecture studio, maybe a fresh home. He glanced upward, the first star twinkling above the city. Sometimes the world punishes wrongdoing on its own timeline. He felt no urge to gloat. If anything, a gentle sadness mingled with relief, because for all the heartbreak, he now understood that life kept moving forward, offering new roads if one dared to step onto them. He brushed a hand over his face, taking a deep, cleansing breath. I can let go now. The hush money in his account might symbolize a moral compromise, but also a chance to reshape his future. And with Jason and Associates crumbling, the man who wrecked his marriage was finally confronting the consequences of his arrogance. A faint smile touched Julian's lips as he strolled to his car, the city lights flickering to life. Tomorrow, he'd figure out his next steps, maybe call a realtor about a bigger workspace, or consider that dream design venture. The path stretched open, the weight of shame lifted. Freed from the scandal's grip, he could let hope guide him forward. Late spring sunlight warmed the gleaming windows of a modest brick building on Willow Street. On the second floor, Julian Gray gently peeled protective film from a newly minted sign, Gray Design. Below the bold letters, a smaller line read, Architecture and Interiors. He took a step back, heart fluttering with equal measures of hope and nerves. This was it, his fresh start. He'd spent the last few months finalizing paperwork, searching for a suitable office, using part of the settlement money to secure this space. Now, with Jason and Associates out of his life, and the hush agreement preventing him from publicizing the old scandal, he felt freer to channel his energy into something productive. Inside, the second-floor suite radiated promise. Wide windows letting in natural light, an open drafting area dotted with large tables and sleek shelves showcasing material samples. He'd hired 2 junior architects fresh out of graduate school. Erica, a bright-eyed designer with a passion for sustainable materials, and Thomas, a meticulous planner who thrived on building codes and structural logic. "Morning, boss," Erica chirped, stepping in with a laptop tucked under her arm. She wore bright sneakers, offsetting her neat black outfit. "I tested the new drafting software last night. It's glitch-free so far." Thomas nodded from behind an array of blueprint tubes. "We've got a meeting with the Steinberg family at 11 o'clock to discuss their lakefront cottage design. I set up a preliminary layout in the conference corner." Julian smiled, a relaxed, genuine grin he hadn't worn in ages. "Excellent. Let's be sure we wow them with ideas. Big windows, open floor plan, something that embraces that lake view." He walked to his own drafting table, a slight swirl of excitement in his stomach. After all the heartbreak, the anxiety, The messy hush agreement, this felt right. He was building something again, literally and metaphorically. As the morning progressed, the trio pored over sketches, color palettes, and 3D models. The sounds of earnest discussion filled the studio. Pencil scratching, keyboard clicks, the gentle hum of creativity. Occasionally, a breeze drifted through the open windows, carrying the faint smell of blossoming trees. Near lunchtime, Erica glanced at Julian with curiosity. "So, Gray Design, is it just you, or do you have a partner?" He hesitated, thought of the past. "No partner," he said softly. "It's just us for now, but I'm open to collaborations down the line." She beamed. "Well, I'm glad to be part of this from the start. We can shape the culture together." He nodded, heartwarming. Yes, shape something new. When the Steinberg family arrived, Julian guided them to a small makeshift conference area near the windows. Over an hour, he presented concept sketches for a cozy lakeside retreat, vaulted ceilings, panoramic glass walls, eco-friendly touches. The clients murmured with enthusiasm, impressed by the clarity and detail. After they left, Thomas high-fived Erica. "They practically signed on the spot. We're off to a strong start." Julian felt a surge of pride that he'd almost forgotten how to experience. "Nice work, both of you," he said. "Let's keep the momentum going." As evening settled, Erica and Thomas headed home, leaving Julian alone in the quiet studio. He walked through the space, flicking off extra lamps, admiring the large drafting table where his next big dream might unfold. Outside, headlights from passing cars streaked golden lines against the darkening sky. He settled into his swivel chair, gaze roaming over sketches pinned to a corkboard, potential expansions, future projects, maybe even a small cafe interior redesign someone had asked about. The hush money let him fund this dream, but more importantly, he'd found the courage to step out of an old life. He pressed a hand against his chest, noticing a gentle sense of optimism instead of the usual ache. "Maybe I'm finally healing," he mused. The storms of heartbreak and scandal had receded into memory. At last, he could focus on building something meaningful without fear overshadowing every decision. Closing his eyes, he pictured the next steps: marketing Gray Design, nurturing client relationships, forging an identity for his new firm. "And for myself," he added silently, letting a tiny smile curve his lips. Because for the first time in a long while, the future seemed bright like the quiet hush of a dawn, promising a fresh day. A humid haze clung to the air the morning Julian and Celine found themselves at the Willow County Courthouse, an imposing stone structure with tall columns and wide marble steps. Summer was inching closer, making the atmosphere sticky and restless. People moved in and out of the building: lawyers, citizens with civil matters, passers-by seeking a cooler interior. Julian wiped a bead of sweat from his brow as he climbed the broad staircase. Clutched in his hand were the final divorce papers. The transitional period had passed. Both lawyers had confirmed no reconciliation seemed likely. Celine was already waiting in the corridor outside courtroom 2B, wearing a simple white blouse and black trousers. Her posture was rigid, face pale. She managed a tentative smile when she saw him approach. "Hey, Jules." He nodded, throat constricting slightly. "Celine." They stepped into the corridor's quieter corner. Lawyers conferred in hushed tones around them, the echo of footsteps on polished floors amplified in the tall hall. Finally, a court clerk beckoned them forward for final confirmation of the documents. The signing process was disconcertingly efficient. Page after page, they penned their names, confirming mutual consent. Julian felt each signature like a small jab to the heart, a formal end to 15 years. The clerk offered polite instructions, her tone neutral, as though divorces happened 100 times a day in this building. It probably did. When it was done, the clerk stamped everything and handed them a receipt. "The decree should be processed within the next day," she said. "Congratulations or condolences, whichever applies." They thanked her awkwardly and stepped back into the corridor. A hush lingered, as if the building itself recognized the gravity of the moment. Celine let out a trembling exhale, glancing at the final paperwork in her hand. "So that's it then. We're officially done." Julian forced himself to remain steady. "Yeah." His voice sounded distant to his own ears. She looked up at him, eyes rimmed with unshed tears. I wanted to say sorry again. Not just for the affair, but for everything that led us here. I know it can't change the past, but I still feel awful about the hurt I caused. He inclined his head, carefully holding his emotions at bay. I know you do, and I appreciate the apology. Her voice caught. I hope you find happiness, Julian. You deserve it. For a moment, he felt tears threaten to blur his vision, but he held them back, letting only a faint tremor in his voice reveal his pain. You too. We both do. She reached out, fingers trembling, as if longing to give his hand a final squeeze, but she held back at the last second, dropping her arm to her side. Take care, she whispered. With that, she turned and walked down the hallway, the echo of her footsteps against the courthouse floor gradually fading. Julian watched her go, chest heavy. The swirl of sorrow and relief in him was almost overwhelming. They had parted ways in a civil manner painful but respectful. He stepped out of the courthouse into the bright midday sun. The day carried on around him as if nothing momentous had occurred. Yet in his life, it felt like an era had ended, like a chapter definitively closed. He paused on the stone steps, scanning the bustling street. There was a pang in his heart, a reminder of the love they once shared, but also an undercurrent of finality that freed him to move forward. We're done, he told himself, exhaling sharply. The marriage was no longer a question mark. He felt an odd hollowness, but also a sense of closure. Perhaps that was what he needed to fully embrace his next chapter. Weeks slipped by, and Grey Design found its footing in the local architectural scene. Clients praised Julian's modern yet homey concepts. Erica and Tomas tackled projects with gusto. Some nights, Julian stayed behind in the studio, reviewing proposals or tweaking 3D renderings until the moon hung high. The swirl of new contracts and satisfied customers buoyed him, giving him a renewed sense of purpose. Solterra Architecture. His old firm had quietly accepted his departure. Now he was the master of his own ship, forging a brand identity that reflected both practicality and creativity. One warm weekend, he attended a local design and innovation expo to network. The busy hall thrummed with energy, vendors showcasing building materials, other architects displaying concept boards, potential clients milling around. While Erica chatted with passers-by at Grey Design's modest booth, Julian found himself strolling the aisles, soaking in the buzz. A familiar face approached Brenda from his former workplace. She wore a bright grin, offering him a playful elbow jab. Well, look at you, Mr. Entrepreneur. Word on the street says you're snagging some big clients. He chuckled softly. We're doing all right. Just landed a small municipal library revamp contract. That's better than all right, she teased. Then her voice softened. I'm happy for you, Jules. You deserve good things after everything. He nodded, gratitude mingling with a bittersweet memory of the past year's turmoil. Thanks. It feels good to move forward. Midway through the expo, he ran into Ariana Bennett, the woman who once considered testifying against Damien. She wore a simple sundress, hair pinned up. Spotting him, she offered a tentative smile. Hey, Julian. Good to see you. They moved aside from the crowd to talk. Ariana's gaze held empathy. I heard about Jason and Associates crashing and burning. Looks like justice took its time, huh? He gave a wry grin. Yeah, I guess so. How about you? Doing better? She nodded. I took a break from everything, moved cities for a bit, but I'm back now, focusing on marketing for a small nonprofit. Feels safer. He was genuinely glad for her. You look happier. She exhaled softly, eyes flicking to the expo booths. I am. No more fear of threatened lawsuits from certain unscrupulous chefs. She paused, meeting his gaze. So how about you? Still dealing with old wounds? He hesitated, then mustered a candid answer. Some wounds linger, but I'm on a better path. I started my own architecture studio. It's given me something to focus on. Plus, the divorce is final. It's weirdly freeing. She nodded, a gentle understanding in her smile. We can't change the past, but we can grow past it. They parted with friendly goodbyes, a subtle sense of solidarity passing between them. As Julian returned to Gray Design's booth, he felt a spark of contentment. Ariana moved forward, he was moving forward, and the fiasco with Damien was receding into memory. Life blossomed in other ways, too. Encouraged by Erica and Thomas, Julian began attending local professional mixers' casual gatherings where architects, interior designers, and potential clients mingled over wine and hors d'oeuvres. At one such event, he found himself chatting with Rachel Hernandez, a furniture designer with a bright laugh and a knack for witty remarks about color palettes. Though they only talked for half an hour, he left the conversation lightheaded with the realization that perhaps he could still connect with people socially, maybe even romantically someday. No rush, but the possibility comforted him. A few nights later, back at the studio, a swirl of excitement filled the air as they celebrated the completion of their first large-scale project. Tomas had brought a bottle of sparkling cider, and they toasted among sketches, half laughing at inside jokes. Julian took a moment to watch the two younger architects banter, thinking, "This is my new family in a sense." And though he occasionally found his mind drifting to Celine, wondering if she found peace, he no longer felt the gut-wrenching sorrow or fury. It was more like a gentle ache, overshadowed by gratitude for the present. In a quiet moment that evening after Erica and Thomas left, he lingered by a pinned photo of their finished project, a sleek ranch house with wide windows, blending modern lines and rustic charm. The client had been thrilled. "We made something good out of scraps of ideas and a leap of faith," he reflected. That metaphor fit his life, too. A few more months passed. The crisp autumn air replaced summer's warmth, painting Portland's skies in a cool, faint drizzle on some days, and striking clarity on others. Julian's routine settled into a rhythm, meeting new clients, supervising construction sites, sharing late-night brainstorming sessions with his team. Life felt calmer, anchored by purpose and day-to-day progress. One particular afternoon, the sun broke through after a light rain, creating tiny rivulets along the sidewalks. Julian stood outside his newest office location. Gray Design had expanded to the entire second floor, knocking down a wall for a bigger drafting area. He took a break from reviewing some blueprints to stretch his legs and soak in the mild sunshine. He gazed upward, letting his eyes follow a few drifting clouds across a blue sky, tinted gold by the afternoon sun. A gentle breeze carried the scent of wet pavement and distant pine. For a moment, he reflected on the year's tumult, how heartbreak and scandal had threatened to consume him, how a hush agreement had felt like defeat, how forging Gray Design had become his lifeline. He didn't regret it now. The hush money he once despised had funded a new dream, and as fate would have it, Jason and associates collapsed under their own weight. Damien no longer commanded headlines, overshadowed by new culinary stars with less baggage. Celine had quietly found a role at a charitable event organization he'd heard through the grapevine. He didn't resent her success. They'd parted with finality, after all. A soft vibration from his phone broke his reverie. An email from a potential client, a boutique hotel chain seeking an architect for a rooftop lounge design. The subject line read, "Excited to collaborate with Gray Design possible multi-city projects." A grin tugged at his lips. Another door opening. He tapped a quick note to Erica and Thomas, inviting them to brainstorm that evening. Just then, his phone chimed a second time, this time a text from Brenda. "Heard you got the Glendale deal. Congrats. Drinks on me soon?" He chuckled, replying with a thumbs up. The world felt open again, not weighed down by hushes or heartbreak. He turned, gazing at the modest sign proclaiming Gray Design in bold letters near the building's entrance. In the reflection of the glass doors, he glimpsed himself slightly older, calmer eyes, a confident posture that once had been lost to despair. "I can stand tall again." Above, the sun emerged fully from behind a cloud, illuminating the sidewalk in a gentle glow. Raindrops from earlier sparkled like tiny jewels on the pavement. Julian inhaled deeply, savoring the crisp post-rain clarity. This is my life now, no secrets, no looming shadows. An unexpected wave of gratitude washed over him for the loyal support of Vanessa, the unwavering eagerness of his new team, even the brief kindness from Ariana. He thought of Celine no longer with bitterness, but with a wistful sense of learning from a shared past. He hoped she found her own measure of peace. He stepped inside the lobby, letting the warmth envelop him. The day's tasks awaited client calls, design drafts, a late meeting, but he felt light on his feet, motivated. I survived the storm, he reminded himself, and I'm still here, building a life that reflects who I am. As he headed up the stairs, a playful beep from his phone signaled another new email, perhaps a final detail for the Glendale project. The bustling energy of possibility filled his chest. He couldn't predict the future, but he had faith in his own resilience. Mistakes and betrayals had shaped him but hadn't defined him. At the top of the stairwell, he paused to glance through the broad window overlooking Portland's skyline. The drizzle had passed, leaving the horizon crisp and shimmering. Even in the city's signature damp climate, moments of brilliant clarity emerged. He smiled softly. People rebuild, just like structures do. And so he placed a hand on the doorknob to Gray Design's expanded office space, brimming with sketches, dreams, and a bright staff. This is my second chance. Opening the door, he stepped forward, ready for whatever came next.